P.S. Don't write back. Camp Timberlake Hills, my new sleepaway camp, my new really cool sleepaway camp. I've been here for 8 days now in bunk 14 and I'm having a totally awesome time. The guys in my bunk like to horse around and play tricks on each other. They're the best, but Sam is crabby. He's the camp director. Sam is huge, over 6 feet tall with a stomach that explodes over his belt. His grey bushy mustache is the only hair that grows on his head. He's totally bald and he never smiles. Never. There's lots to do here, but softball is my favourite. The guys in my bunk are the best softball players in the whole camp. Not to brag or anything, but I happen to be the bunk star hitter and I'm only 12, a year younger than everyone else in the bunk. Home Run Dave, that's what they call me. As I said, camp is pretty excellent. There is one problem though. I've been here for over a week and I haven't received a single letter from home. That might not sound so strange, but last summer, Mum and Dad sent 4 letters and a carton of pretzels, and that was on the second day. This year, so far, nothing, not even a crummy postcard. So when Sam grumbled, "Mail call," this afternoon, I raced out of the bunk. I knew he'd have a letter for me today, or a package, something. Sam dug through his mail pouch and pulled out a bunch of letters. Don Benson, Mark Silver, Patrick Brown. The guys jumped up to claim their mail. By the time Sam finished, Don held up 6 letters. "Hey guys, how many did you get?" Jeremy waved 3 letters in the air. Patrick paraded around with the new Mutant Ratman comic his dad had sent. I had nothing. "I can't believe this," I muttered. "Mum promised she would write." I know it's no big deal, really. I mean, there must be lots of kids at camp who don't get mail, but my parents had promised. 3 days later and still no mail. I asked Sam to check with the post office. He said he would. The post office is run by Miss Mildred. She's been in charge of the town mail forever, and in 50 years, she's never lost a letter. At least, that's what she says. I started imagining all these crazy things. Maybe Mum and Dad sent letters to the camp I went to last summer, or maybe there had been an earthquake and they couldn't leave the house. Dumb things like that. Anyway, I finally decided to call home and find out what was going on. "Sam," I said after mail call that day, "I need to phone home." Sam shook his head. "No calls home unless it's an emergency," he barked. "But it is an emergency," I insisted. "No calls home." The next day, after swimming, we all raced back to the bunk to change for our big softball game against bunk 13. "Mail call," Sam yelled as I tied my sneakers. I ran out to the porch in time to see Sam yank out the first letter from his pouch. "David Stevenson. Today's your lucky day. Miss Mildred found this letter in the bottom of the drawer," Sam said, waving a crumpled envelope in the air. "She can't imagine how it got there." She mumbled something about elves. Anyway, she says she'll keep looking for more. I practically ripped the letter from his hand. I checked the name on the front just to make sure it was really mine. Then I tore it open. "Dear David, we're not coming up for visiting today. Your sister misses you. See you in August. Mum and Dad. P.S. Don't write back." Huh? That's it? I turned the paper over, then back again. I gazed around suspiciously. This had to be a joke from one of the guys, but they all had their heads buried in their letters. No one even glanced in my direction. I sat down and read the letter again. "We're not coming up for visiting day." How could that be? They promised. They always came up for visiting day. Always. "Your sister misses you." No way. My older sister Carly danced around the house like a lunatic the day I left for camp. She said it was the happiest day of her life. And P.S. don't write back. That was the weirdest part of all. Why would Mum write something like that? She said she loved getting letters from me. A huge lump stuck in my throat. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not until the next day. The next afternoon, another letter came for me. Excellent. This will explain everything. I started to read. Dear David, we're sending you to live with your great uncle John. He's coming to pick you up on the 27th. We think it's for the best. Mum and Dad. P.S. Don't write back. What? I choked. The letter shook in my trembling hands. How can they send me to live with great uncle John? I mean, he's 87 years old and lives in an old age home. I glanced up and stared into the trees across from my bunk. They started to spin around me. My hands grew numb. Then they turned to ice. My eyes filled with tears. I leapt up and ran all the way to the camp office. Up the steps, up to the front door. It was locked. I peered through the window screen. No one inside, but there, hanging on the wall, the phone. I had to get to that phone. I twisted around to my left, then to my right. No one inside. Good. I gently raised the screen and crept under the windowsill into the office. Then I darted for the phone and dialed. By the third ring, my palms dripped with sweat. Beads of perspiration clung to my forehead. Come on, pick up! I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. Come on already. Then finally, on the fourth ring, my mother answered. Mum, I cried, what's going on? Not home right now. Please leave a message and have a nice... Oh no, I heard the voices outside coming towards the office. There was no time to leave a message. Think, Dave, think. Get out of here quick. Then I spied it, a window at the back of the office. I threw open the screen and dived out. I charged back to the bunk, panting wildly. I leaped up the porch steps. The door flew open and there stood Sam, a stone statue glaring at me. Stevenson, you're in big trouble. But Sam, I started to explain. No, Stevenson, you're late for the scavenger hunt. In the woods, remember? Now you'll have to catch up with the other guys. He shuffled down the stairs and headed for the trees. The scavenger hunt, right. A hike through the woods, then a campfire supper. Then the hunt. I had forgotten. I tossed everything out of my drawers, searching for stuff for the scavenger hunt. My sweatshirt, backpack, flashlight. How could my parents do this to me? I kept repeating it over and over to myself as I searched the bunk frantically for my flashlight. And then I saw it under my bed, next to the flashlight. The envelope from the letter this afternoon. I read the address again. David Stevenson, Camp Timberlake Hills. That's it. Why hadn't I noticed it before? My camp is Camp Timberlake Hills. Now it made sense. Camp Timberlake Hills stood on the other side of the lake. A mix-up. Simple as that. I breathed a small sigh of relief. Those letters weren't for me. They were for some other David Stevenson at some other camp, and he probably had my letters. I grabbed my flashlight and stuffed it into my backpack. I knew what I had to do. While everyone searched for clues on the scavenger hunt, I would escape across the lake and find Camp Timberlake and the other David Stevenson. As soon as the scavenger hunt began, I slipped away into the dark and headed for the dock. The camp rowboats bobbed gently up and down on the moonlit water. I steadied one and climbed inside. I leaned over and tugged on the rope that held the anchor. Heavy, very heavy. I clutched the rope with two hands and heaved. Uh-oh, not as heavy as I thought. The anchor flew out of the water and crashed onto the boat floor. The boat pitched from side to side. I crouched down and grasped the oar locks tightly and waited to be caught. Silence. I breathed a low, steadying sigh, then I locked the oars in place and began to row. As I cut through the water, the twinkling lights from the camp grew smaller and smaller. I turned to glance at the opposite shore. Thick woods. Total blackness. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, but I had to get over to the other camp. I wanted my mail. I rowed faster. My arms ached. Tiny splashes around the oars thundered in my ears. My head throbbed, and finally, a dock. I dropped the anchor and stepped up. The dock's rotted wood splintered and cracked under my sneakers. Where is the path? I wondered, sweeping my flashlight over thick weeds. I stumbled through the dark, through the tall, scratchy grass that scraped against my legs. Suddenly, the beam from my flashlight fell upon a big wooden sign. I stood directly in front of it to read the worn letters. Camp Timberlake Hills. I found it. I gazed beyond the sign. I squinted in the darkness. Yes, bunks. But where are all the kids? Why didn't they have any lights in this camp? Weird. Very weird. I stumbled through the grass to the first bunk. A skinny boy about my age hunched over the porch railing. He raised his head slowly. His hollowed eyes met mine. Excuse me, I stammered. Is there a David Stevenson in this camp? He lifted a bony arm and pointed to the blackened doorway behind him. Thanks, I said, but I didn't budge. I wanted to go back to my cheery normal camp. Just go in, I told myself. Just get your letters. I inched past the boy and pushed open the creaky door. My hand trembled as I searched the dark room with my flashlight. No one here. I'm leaving, I decided. This place is too creepy. Way too creepy. But as I turned, I caught sight of something. No, someone. Someone moving in the shadows. Who's there? I choked out. What do you want? A harsh voice replied. I'm looking for David Stevenson. Well, you found him, the voice snapped back. I shone my light to the very back of the bunk, and there he stood, a scrawny kid with long brown hair and torn, dirty clothes. What do you want? This David Stevenson demanded with an icy stare. I couldn't answer. My heart thumped wildly. I said, "What do you want?" he repeated. I gulped loudly and began, I have your mail. His eyes narrowed angrily. My what? I pulled the letters from my pocket and held them out. Your mail, letters from home, I explained, and I'd like mine, if you have them. Who are you? He demanded. He stepped close to me. I'm David Stevenson too, I replied. You see, I go to camp. Leave, he screamed, shaking his fists violently. You can't let them see you here. Oh, wow, this kid is crazy. Listen, I pleaded. Just give me my letters and I'll go. Go, go, go! He shrieked. I flew out the door and down the steps. The skinny kid had disappeared. I staggered through the thick grass, darting around the tree stumps and boulders. Then I noticed a familiar smell. The smell of a campfire. I listened. Crackling. Loud snapping. I crouched down behind a large rock. I spied the flickering light of the campfire and kids, hundreds of kids circling it, arms wrapped around each other, swaying back and forth, moaning. What kind of camp is this, I wondered. I swallowed hard. Something is really wrong here. I jumped up ready to bolt, but a long, skinny arm swooped down and grabbed my hand. The kid from the porch. His eyes glowed an evil red as he tugged me towards the fire. I struggled to break free, but I couldn't escape from the skinny kid's grip. The swaying campers turned to face us, moaning. Their sunken eyes stared blankly into mine. Were they in some kind of weird trance? They dropped their arms and parted for us. My face flushed in the heat of the leaping flames, and then I knew what would come next. They were going to push me into the fire. No, I screamed. With a hard tug, I broke free and ran, faster than I'd ever run before. I leapt into the boat. I rowed swiftly across the lake and charged up to my bunk. Sam paced on the porch, back and forth, back and forth. Sam, I cried breathlessly. Stevenson, where have you been? The whole camp is out searching for you, and your mother called. She said they had to go away. Sam, listen, in one long breath, I told Sam about everything. The camp, the other David Stevenson, the sad, moaning campers, the skinny kid who tried to drag me into the fire. Sam stared hard at me. David, what are you talking about? We're the only camp on this lake. No, you're wrong, Sam, I saw it. The sign said Camp Timberlake Hills. Sam rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Well, there once was a camp across the lake, he said, but it burned to the ground one summer 30 years ago. "No," I shrieked, "it's there, I'll show you." Sam ushered me to the bunk steps. "We're not going anywhere tonight. We'll straighten all this out in the morning." But, in the morning, Sam repeated sternly. "Now get inside and go to sleep." I staggered to my bed in a daze. "I know what I saw," I mumbled as I climbed into bed. I grabbed my flashlight and pulled the covers up over my head. I flicked on the light and flashed it on one of the envelopes that I'd just received. "See, I'm not crazy. It says right there, David Stevenson, Camp Timberlake Hills." Then I pointed the light along the top right corner of the envelope and gasped. The postmark. It was dated July 10th, 1964.